so my skeptical mind, and that's just who I am. My skeptical mind goes to, well, yeah, of course, you've got this guy over here that's logical and reasonable, and you got this guy over here that's wearing a tinfoil hat. Of course, the tinfoil hat guy's gonna see a lot of stuff, right? He's like imagining it, or he's watched one too many sci-fi movies.
But it's used to help us frame hypotheses for UFO propulsion, power, stealth, weapons.
Everything that we experience is very positive.
Sometimes the field of ufology has a short memory span.
We didn't know anything about the $22 million back then. We just kind of thought, well, this is, and I think that was the reason why they were looking for military-type people, because in the military, you work with whatever you got, no matter what the situation is, and you just kind of adapt and overcome.
What are you going to do with all this? You can't even take care of your own files and get them put into the current system, but yet you want to go collect other people's things. So what are you going to do with this? Who are you giving all this to?
It just really struck me about how the common thread seemed to be deception, but deception of a human nature. So that's what I started thinking, who would these folks be? I mean, then I started thinking about the intelligence agencies, what role they could play, and what would be their motivations for getting involved in ufology.
I'm not saying that because the gimbal is not a rotating flying saucer, that means that all the UFOs are false. Not at all. All I'm doing is I'm looking at this one case, these individual cases, and seeing if there's an explanation for those. So try to, if I could ask people out there listening, don't think that I'm trying to attack your entire beliefs about these things.
Nice to be in orbit.
Welcome to UFO Classified. I'm your host, Erica Lukes. I was happy to be here on a Friday evening and to know that my friends from all over the world are listening. You are the most intelligent, dedicated group of people, and I appreciate your support. You can find me at UFOclassified.com, or you can look for me on social media, Twitter, which I'm such a bad tweeter. I mean, seriously, I need to get my social media on. It's just ridiculous. You can find me on Facebook. So look for me there. If you want to support the show, you can become a Patreon, and I really appreciate all of you who do that. I want to give a big shout out to Mario, to Bruce, to Echo, to all of the people that help bring this to the public. This is an important topic, and I want to now welcome my wonderful guest, Greg, Mr. On the Fly Bishop.
Yes. Yeah, I just looked down. I was about to go to the store to get pinto beans so I can make dinner for some friends tomorrow. And I looked down. It's like, Erica, can you be on the show right now? It's like, okay, I guess I'll wait on the pinto beans. They're open till 9 o'clock. That's fine.
Yeah, pinto beans, they're always there when you need them, I think.
Yes. Well, I've found a new recipe to be used for the slow cooker, and you don't have to soak them or anything. You just cook them for like 8 hours. Cook the crap out of them, and they're great.
You know, you are quite the cook, I have to say.
I love cooking. I've been cooking since I was, I think, 8 years old.
I like cooking too. Even though I post pictures of me usually like mangling grilled cheeses and different things, I'm actually quite a good cook if you're wearing a blindfold and, don't have a sense of taste.
I'm sure you're better than that. You have to really work. You either have to not do anything and have no idea what you're doing, or really work hard to make really bad food.
Well, it's like if I bake, I mean, just forget about it. I think I've seen the picture of my loaf of bread, on Facebook, which seriously resembles a freaking hockey puck. It's just so ridiculous. But
yeah, you inadvertently made what's that called, matzo.
Yeah, that's another good way of looking at it. I feel pretty happy about that.
I just got some sourdough starter from a friend, so I was going to start, and then I bought this really expensive Dutch oven thing, so I was going to actually start making bread. I'm real late on the bread curve right now.
Well, you know what? It's one of those things. It's just not. It's not in my cards. I just have to look to other things, even though I keep trying. But it's like, okay, at some point in time, the universe is saying, please don't come near the oven. I think that's pretty obvious.
UFO Classified and Cooking with Erica Lewis.
Oh, God. That could be probably one of the worst reality shows that you would ever see. For sure.
Well, then, of course, everybody would tune in every week. What is she going to make this week?
Yeah. I've been thinking about, in my spare time, I have a lot of time to ponder and think about little YouTube channels that I could do. And, of course, I've always wanted to do this sock puppet ufology show.
Oh, God, you should do that.
I know. I've talked about it for years, and I actually was making sock puppets.
I know. I saw a couple of them.
They are even more frightening than my cooking, but I just thought that would be kind of a funny way to not only vent, but then to kind of portray people in ufology and some of the comical situations I think that we find ourselves in and witness to.
They ought to do UFO, like ufologist roasts, like they do of comedians and entertainers. They really should.
I think, aren't we too fragile though?
Yeah, well, too bad.
Yeah, you know what? I'm thinking it's too bad, but if
you couldn't take it, then everybody would know you weren't cool.
Okay.
Immediately, if you couldn't take a joke, everybody's like, well, forget about that person. They take themselves too seriously, which is like most of ufology, I guess.
It's true. There's a lot of, there's a lot of fragile ego, and I don't, it's funny, especially when you look at some of the current goings-ons with the release of certain documents and different things, and people wanting to be the first jumping on that story, and all of that stuff. It is interesting to see, and sometimes, and you do the same thing. It's like you just step back and say, okay, this is let's just watch people in action. Yeah.
And I have no reason to believe it's going to be any different than before, that there's going to be a lot of noise, and then it's not going to be exactly what people expect, so they're not going to like it, and it's going to be forgotten, and whoever leaked that information for whatever reason will be happy that they did for whatever reason.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, it's like I don't know. I mean, the whole thing to me it's interesting because you've got this study of people and their, the culture, all of this. It's just, I don't know. I love it. It's fascinating for me. And I know you and I talk about that, just watching all of this. Okay. What are you making?
I'm not making anything. I'm pouring myself a Fuji natural spring water from Italy.
Oh, which you were going to go on a trip and you didn't, and I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I was going to go see Susan, Demeter St. Clair, and Massimo Teodorani, but all the flights got canceled, so I couldn't go. I was going to stay at their place and hang out and eat at nice places and talk and visit, and I've never had an actual, Italy's my favorite place to go outside the United States. I've never actually been able to visit anybody there that's a friend. Now, I've got two there and possibly a couple others in Milan. But it's nice to be able to visit a country with somebody there like I did with Miguel Romero in Mexico City in March, right before all this came down.
And your trip with Miguel sounded like an adventure, and one that kind of had you in some situations that you might not have put yourself in otherwise.
Yeah, well, we went to let's see, what was the one thing? We almost got robbed by pirates. That was pretty cool.
Okay, and I've got to give, for people that don't know who Miguel is, give us a little bit of background on Miguel. Red Pill Junkie.
He was a blogger. He still is. I said, would you be interested in doing a book cover? So the first book cover he did was It Defies Language, the last the last book I released. And he's also writes a lot for, let's see, Daily Grail, and until recently, Mysterious Universe. And yeah, I mean, he's all over the place. He almost came out of nowhere, but he read all the same books I did and was kind of down with the same stuff I was. So we became good friends because of that. And I suggested, after my wife passed away, I wanted to go on a trip and just get out of town. So I went to Mexico City for a week, and he was my host, and we drove around and looked at the pyramids and went to museums and ate really nice food. And I had dinner at his parents' place, and his mother made us dinner. I had dinner made in a Mexican household by a Mexican mom making incredible food. He said, "What do you want her to make?" And I said, "I don't know." She goes, "Well, pick something." And I thought, she can make anything she wants. It doesn't matter. So he recognized and said, "I don't know what that is. Have her make that." And it was amazing.
What if I love experiences like that? You know, and I mean, I've had some amazing experiences with you on my trips to LA, and you coming to Salt Lake, and us going camping at I love those because it's fun, A, to see the world, and then B, to have adventures with your friend. And especially when you've got the same kind of mindset where you're really curious about the paranormal and all sorts of other things. And so it's a trip. And I hope that we can have an adventure like that sooner than later.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I've gone out to the desert and visited friends, but it's like, one or two people at a time. We kind of stay across the room from each other, which is a little weird. Well, at least 6 feet away. I was tested a couple of weeks ago and I'm fine, but that doesn't mean I'm fine now. So it's, I want it to come back to normal, but it's just I don't think the world's going to be the same ever again, although it'll come back to some kind of normalcy probably here in the next year or two. And we'll see. But yeah, no, I was going to speak. I don't know about you, but I was going to speak at like 5 or 6 conferences this year. Whoop, they're all gone.
I know.
3 of them are online. I think I survived the cut for 2 of them. No, 3. Yeah. So the 3 that were online that I'm actually still signed up for.
I know it's been, and that's such a big part of everything. We like to be social and have our, the conferences and things. And I've loved speaking at conferences. As you can imagine, I'm on the bad girl list. So, which,
yeah,
I mean, I get asked to speak at conferences that value differing opinions, but that's okay. We'll see.
Yeah,
what happens.
I really don't care who's having me speak as long as I can talk about what I want to talk about. Like I spoke at Roswell in 2017, and I asked them. I think it was a faith-based group or a Christian group. Guy Malone was running it, and I said, "I will speak for your group, but can I say anything I want?" He says, "Yeah, we don't care what you say. Just come and say what you're going to say. You're totally free to say whatever you want. We will not censor you. We will not tell you what to say." And I said, "Good, okay." And they were true to their word. I got to do the talk the way I wanted to do it. And yes, a few people got slightly upset, but whatever, that's fine. Most people were very interested. In fact, I don't know if you know this. I don't know if this happens to you, but I don't mean to. But some of my talks, people get mad. People get up and leave. It's like I'm not here to insult you or tell you that you're wrong or anything. I'm just as interested in the subject as you are, but just in a slightly different way.
So why do people get angry with what you're talking about?
Let's see. One time, I'm trying to think. Oh, I was talking 10, 15 years ago. I did a talk called "UFOs Aren't from Other Planets, Maybe." That was the title of the talk. And I presented like 5, 6, 8 different theories about UFO origin or perception or whatever. And people tend to think that I'm a skeptic and I'm telling them that people are seeing things that they aren't and they're making it up and it's natural phenomena. It's like, Are you even listening to what I'm saying? I'm just saying we have to look at other alternatives because they're interesting. I'm not saying they're true. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying it's interesting. And some people don't even like that. So whatever, I can't control that.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, I do remember hearing, when I first got publicly involved in the subject, Greg Bishop, he's, kind of out there a little bit, not necessarily, you were kind of going against the grain with some of the things that you were saying in a community where people are so vested in their belief systems, that it's like, I guess it's like religion or any politics, anything else. It's like you can't convince people of, you can't, it's hard to change people's belief systems. And you've stated to me, in fact, just a few days ago when we talked, that you don't want to, you don't care. That's not your main goal for doing what you're doing.
No, I'm doing what I'm doing because I'm interested. Like the reason I do my show. The reason I do my show is because I really want to talk to people. That's the reason why I started a magazine with my friends in the early 90s. I really wanted to talk to people, and I want to have a ticket to do that. And your ticket is either being an interviewer. Everybody has a podcast now, but they've discovered the same thing. You have to have a ticket, whether that be a magazine or working for media or you're writing a book or you have a podcast, which is probably the easiest thing to do. And I think the best shows are where people are curious. They're truly personally curious about things, and they ask their guests these questions that satisfy their curiosity. Not the audience's curiosity, not what they think is popular, not what's going to get them on TV, not what's going to make a movie deal, not what's going to be in their book, but a true, actual curiosity about what they're asking the guest and listening to them and reacting to that rather than just going through a list of questions. And those shows, those really interest me. And those kind of people really interest me. And the other thing I love to do is talk to people that nobody has ever talked to before, or conversely, not conversely, but that people haven't talked to in a while. Like nobody's talked to what? I don't know. I'm trying to think of somebody, but just somebody that's hasn't been on a show in months or years. I just kind of grabbed, like Brent Rains. I had him on a couple of years ago, and nobody had talked to him in a while. I loved talking to him. It was a fun talk. We talked about John Keel. But yeah, that's, I had this guy, Stephen Finley, on a few weeks ago. He's an African-American studies professor and he's a religious studies scholar from Louisiana State University. And we talked about the Nation of Islam as a UFO group or cult. And for a lot of people, including me, it was quite eye-opening. And I thought it was pretty amazing. It's like you don't see any, you see mostly like 95, 99% white people at UFO conferences. And that's, I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing or whatever. But the fact that the perspective from his point of view of a black audience about the UFO thing is slightly to completely different than a white audience in a lot of cases. And that to me is fascinating. And it's not to be social justice, any of that. It was just fascinating to me that he could provide that perspective. Like, why does the Nation of Islam think that that they come from space, or at least their leaders do? Why do they think that they have a heritage? I mean, it sounds like contactee stuff.
Right.
But what it is basically a complete rejection of the mainstream society that they're in. It's like, okay, we don't like your belief system, so we're going to make up our own. So that to me it made it amazing to me to hear that perspective. And then I'll have people on that have nothing to do with the UFO thing, like my friend Shannon Taggart, who did the Seance book. She does photography of seances and spiritualist meetings, and stuff would show up on her imagery that she didn't know what it was. And she's a photographer, and she wouldn't know what these smears, points of light, strange patterns that would show up. She says this shouldn't even be happening, and she would show it to the spiritualist people, and they'd say, "Oh, that's my husband." And she's like, "What do you mean it's your husband? It's just like a bunch of sparkly purple stuff." And she said, and the woman immediately says, no, when you took that picture, I was talking to my husband, like whatever, her spiritualist channeling thing. But, there's a, what was going on, what showed up on the imagery, not on the film, but on the CCD, what happened in the camera that made that show up. Shannon doesn't know, but she does know it's happening. And I think a lot of these things, all the UFO stuff and the paranormal stuff and Bigfoot and ghosts and all that, they're all connected at a very basic level. I don't know what that level is, but I do know that that us, humans are the connection, because we experience all these things. And so I'm really happy that people are more interested in what the witness sees, feels, and remembers, and their emotions and all that now than they were maybe even 5 years ago.
Right.
So that's a good development. Help the witness first, and then go on with your data and all that. But I think at this point people are realizing the witness is primary, and that's good, because I think if you help people understand what's going on with them and understand how to integrate it into their life, that will help the researcher as well understand what's going on with the phenomenon.
Absolutely. And I love the way, you look at things. You always, sometimes when I get bogged down in some of the research that I'm doing, because it's, it's not love and light and happiness and kumbaya and stuff. I mean, it's like I talk to you, and it's nice to kind of get your perspective, because it's, as you get focused, and it's like, sometimes you got to smack yourself back out of it.
Yeah, you do. And, the best way to do that is to have a variety of friends that have different interests than yours. Obviously I'm not going to be interested in people that are like hardcore ETHers or people that are very into what's going on with the UFO field right now. It doesn't interest me so much. But outliers and people you've had, and like Massimo and Chris and Susan and all these people that don't really get heard and have a different perspective. Like, they're not going to talk about the Wilson document. They're going to talk about what's happening what's happening with your research right now. Oh, well, we have this guy that, he had an encounter, and now he can play Bach music on his, on his piano where he couldn't before. It's like, okay, that's totally fascinating to me.
Yeah.
That's way more interesting to me than what color was it and what direction was it going, and how many cases have we had here and whatever. That's fine that people do that, but it doesn't interest me personally, because I think the gold lies in our interaction with the phenomenon and with the paranormal, not in what the paranormal or the UFO phenomenon is, because we have no way of knowing that. However, if we understand ourselves and how we interact with it, that will be a big part of whatever understanding or answer we get. At least that's what I think right now.
It's so fascinating. And how many years have you done this?
My first UFO article was, I don't even want to say, it was 1988.
Whoa, Nelly.
When I was a young lad.
A young lad.
A little zine called Kooks Magazine, and I loved it. It was on a newsstand in LA, and I wrote to the editor, and then I found her name, Donna Cossie, in the phone book in Boston, or whatever, we're Alston, Massachusetts. And I called her up and I said, "Hi, my name's Greg Bishop. Can I write an article for your magazine?" And so I ended up writing an article on the Aetherius and Unarius societies, which are both contactee organizations that still exist now, even in Southern California.
And, and it's interesting because you've shared some of your old pictures over the years, and it's like you look back on those great pictures from the 80s, and, you're brooding you've got the brooding look on the moped, and,
Oh, I was horribly like depressed and pissed off and angry and all that, up to the point at which I decided I was tired of feeling that way. I mean, how many times can you feel like you want to kill yourself before you either kill yourself or you get tired of it? So I just decided to get tired of it. And that's part of the reason why we're sitting here talking right now.
Absolutely. It is. I mean, and it's interesting. I was out and about the other day, and I was, I drove by a woman on her cell phone, and very, I don't know what, she just kind of struck me as, I don't even know. But anyway, my whole point is when I saw her, it reminded me of a person, and this is probably naughty, but these are my own thoughts that I'm sharing with the whole world, I guess. But just, like
please do.
The person that, is, it's like you wake up in the morning, you live your life, from 6 a.m. until, taking the kids to soccer or doing, A, B, C, and D, which is great. And I'm not diminishing anything like that, but I just remember seeing her, and I've run into people like that, and it's great. But I just remember thinking, I'm very happy that isn't me. I'll never fit into that group. I mean, I even though I would have a lot of things in common, but I've just always been different that way, and I'm glad that I am, because it's opened me up, just like you, I'm sure, to experiences that 99.9% of the people in the world will never have, and it's such a cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, if you can do anything to make life more exciting and less boring, then do it. And if your instrument is ufology, then go ahead and do it. But don't be boring, and don't be don't be a dick. So
now what?
Yeah.
Maybe you should get a new line of T-shirts.
Yes, don't be boring, don't be a dick. Those
yeah.
are my 2 golden rules. So, as long as I can keep things interesting and have my friends be interesting and learn new things, I'm fine, and if I'm involved in in some project, do something. And I got laid off from my regular work like 4 years ago, and I said, why don't I just decide to do my, do what I want within reason, and try and get some sort of job or jobs that give me the freedom to do what I want to do most of the time. And over these 4 years, I've got 2, 3, 4 different jobs, but something like 90% of my time is my own. And I don't know why I wasn't like that, why I didn't discover that, 20 years ago or longer. Like, how could I have been so stupid for so long? But the thing is, you do things when you're ready for it. So I guess I was ready for it at that time. I just decided to configure my life so I could do things that I want to do rather than what I had to do.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to do things. You have to earn a living. You have to make money. You have to go to the store. You have to, all kinds of things. But it's once you get to a certain point in your life that you can balance that out properly, if you can, and then do things you really want to do, then you should do them. Before I got laid off in my last job, I used to joke with my coworkers. I said, I wish they'd hurry up and lay me off because I got stuff to do. And eventually they did.
And that's so cool. And I just, I love that. And I wish, like, I'm just sitting here thinking, I wish that you and Nick and I could just go hang out and have a brew and talk about all of this stuff. And then I could get my sock puppets out and do a little show for you guys. That'll be soon.
Right. And we'll write a script, and then we'll put it up on YouTube, and then everybody will get mad.
You know what? I think I'm kind of to the point where it's like, I for a long time, and I think you and I are both pretty sensitive, and I know for a long time with me, because I had, coming out in a public sense, I had a lot of people taking after me from the get-go. And as you know, because I've shared this with you, it's been really nasty. It's been really hard. And so that's been one of those things that I've just been, it's taken me a long time to get over that, and to just look at people and say, you know what, if that's A, the way you are, then B, I don't want to be around you. And I now look at people like that and think this is why the field is so nasty, because there are people who, for some reason, even though they wouldn't behave like this at their day-to-day job, maybe they would now, I don't know, because the climate has changed so much, but it's like most people get away with things.
Not if they wanted to keep their job.
Right. But, it's like people are definitely becoming more emboldened, but it's like you can get away with every bad behavior, unethical behavior in the world in the field of ufology. And it's very interesting to me. And I know it sometimes for both of us, it's like, you kind of, it stings a little bit, but I guess you get a tough skin.
Well, it did at first, and then I realized, and I tell this to friends of mine now when they get bad reviews or whatever, the first question is, do you know that person? No. Do you respect their opinion? I guess not. Then who cares? If you don't know them or respect their opinion or both or either, then who cares what they're saying? Unless it has some merit, and you have to look and see if something has some merit, like, instead of just saying, you're an idiot, like, great, fine, leave me alone. But if somebody says, where did you get this piece of information? Or I have different information and it contradicts yours. Okay, I'll listen. As long as you're not a dick about it, like I said before. That's fine. I mean, I have no problem with, reassessing my opinions on things or views on things or research I've done. I've had people point out problems, and I've acknowledged that I've either made a mistake or I didn't look into it far enough. Of course. But just plain old, this is dumb, I don't like it, these people are idiots. It's like, well, fine, go ahead. I'm glad you said your piece, because it's completely useless and I don't care.
Well, that's the thing, and it's been interesting for me as of late, because there are, some people that kind of appeared on the UFO scene and things like that, and they're very quick to put other people down for questioning things that need to be questioned, and it makes me laugh. It's like, okay, so you don't use my name, but you use EL. Oh, well, what's EL saying? And da-da-da. And it just, they don't bother to tag you in post, but they'll rip you apart and do all these things. And it's just like, oh my gosh. It's like, 2-year-olds in a sandbox. And it's crazy. And
if somebody doesn't approach me directly, I kind of don't care what they're saying behind my back, because it's really, what am I going to do about it? And I don't think really people talk too much about me. I don't cause that much controversy, really.
What are you trying to say about me?
I'm
just kidding.
You were talking about causing controversy.
I know.
I don't think I do. I guess I do inadvertently, but it's so minor, And I hope I'm mature enough to listen to people that have a point. But, 90% of the stuff that's thrown my way, and it's not very much, but criticism is just, it's worthless to me, and it has no merit, and I don't really have to worry about it. As I've told a couple of friends, do your work, stop worrying about stuff. What are they going to think of this? It's like, just do your work. If you do your work and you do it in a way that the best you can, and back up what you have to say instead of just having a bunch of opinions, and listen to criticism, good criticism, then you should have no problem. And like I said, 90% of the stuff that's thrown at you is just, if you don't respond to it, most people don't care anyway. The problem is just, getting in that sandbox and tussling with people. That's why I have those do not engage shirts and merchandise. Like, don't waste your time with people who are just going to waste your time.
Right.
In fact, most people are going to argue with you, are going to waste your time. I have friends that discuss things with me, and not really argue with me, but we'll have a discussion, and we're fine afterwards. We don't hate each other, and that's good. That's the way, I hope that's the way civilized people act. I have a difference of opinion with you, and I may not even respect what your opinion is, but you're not being rude to me. You're not being, you're not just trolling. You're having an actual discussion, which hardly ever happens now. But when that does, to me, that's almost magical. At this point, having an actual reasoned debate about something is very rare. And when I find it, it's almost like gold to me.
It
either
is.
With other people, either watching other people do it or being engaged in it with people. And it's mostly private. Discussions I've had in, bars or at conventions with people, or on the phone or whatever. Just this private stuff is far more interesting to me than cage matches about stupid subjects that ultimately don't make that much difference. Because the stuff that makes a difference to me cannot be solved in a ufology cage match.
Right. You're right, and I mean, I think that it's having intelligent, thoughtful, grounded people to have conversations with, especially about this subject, is really critical for the development of our own work, or and for the sake of the subject, because for me, and I know you feel the same way, it's like that we've got older people in the field that we need to learn from, and if we have ideas or thoughts and we can engage with them and have a good conversation, it helps you grow. And I think the problem is if when you have people that are they're so, again, set in their belief systems that it's like it's not having a dialogue and say, wait a minute, okay, maybe there is something to learn from your side. And unfortunately, that's kind of where we are today as a society. We've kind of lost that ability. It's like you dig in and I'm right and you're wrong. And Lord help us, because it's a sad thing, and it doesn't help anybody in the long run.
No, I find that if something gets too heated online, the first thing I'll do, if I think the person's worth contacting, as I'll contact them privately and say, what's the matter? And 9 times out of 10, they're totally surprised. What are you bothering me for? It's like, because you seem upset and I don't want to have a fight with you. So let's discuss what this is privately before this gets worse. And majority of those times, the person really didn't mean to get nasty, but it's a public forum. So, it's like I said, it's like a cage match. I mean, everybody's looking. You're basically have a big fight or flight going on. You can't look wrong. You have to look strong. It's like, let's just talk privately. This is much better. And most of the time, the few times I've actually had to do that, a couple times a year maybe, they're like, no, I didn't mean it that way. And, this is what I actually meant. It's like, well, when you're like struggling to make yourself sound right and better than the other person, you're not going to say what you really mean. What you're saying is trying to save face. You're not advancing any kind of discussion about anything. You're just trying to make yourself look good, or not look bad, actually. And that shouldn't be the point of any kind of reasoned discussion. It should be the subject and the stuff you're talking about, not feeling bad or looking bad or trying to look right or smarter than other people or whatever. I mean, if those are your motivations, then get out.
Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of those motivations in the subject, and it has been interesting. You say, that you approach people offline when you see stuff like that, and I do as well. And it's been funny to me. It's like, when you don't get a response, that there's, no.
Yeah, that happens too. Just like, what's wrong? And then nothing happens. And then they stop discussing with you online. It's like, oh, okay.
Well,
fine.
or they continue their rhetoric online and things. And it's just like, ugh. I mean, it's such a strange.
If that happens, I go on and say, I tried to contact you privately so we could work this out, but apparently you don't want to do that. I've done that too.
Yeah. It's definitely
just to show people that they're being obstinate on purpose.
Right. Yes,
not that they're wrong, just that they're being obstinate.
Yes. No, I agree, and that is. It's been interesting to me, but it's I don't know. The whole thing is it's fascinating. But I want to ask you what you think, because about ufology being like a good old boys club.
It has been for a long time, and it's just the way it's been, and hopefully that's changing a little bit. I hope. I was talking to a friend of mine, somebody I've known for years, and we were at I was at this internet radio station called Kill Radio. I was on it for like 12 years, from like 2000 to like 2011 or 12 when I switched over to podcast. And I remember we had a meeting, and it was basically radical left-wing people had started this station. I'm not a radical left-wing person, but it didn't bother me that it was a radical left-wing station, or, group. And what they said at one of our meetings was, we have to get more diverse voices in here. And of course, me and this friend of mine were like, well, they're welcome. What are you talking about? It's not like we're telling them to stay out. And their point, which was very well taken, was not only do you have to say that they're welcome, you have to actively tell them they're welcome and bring them in, because otherwise they're going to feel like there's this huge history of just being excluded. So they're just going to assume they're going to be excluded. But you have to actively invite them. And then those voices come out. And that happened way more than once. We had, Black, Hispanic, Asian, we had a Indian, we had all these people in there basically because we just reached out and said, come here and tell us what you want to do, because we want to hear what you want to do. So I think that has to be done, and I don't know if you call that affirmative action or what, but you have to make people feel like they're comfortable in your group before they'll open up. And so I think that encouraging women and everybody else that, women, minorities, everybody into the ufology arena is a good thing. I mean, I want those people in. It makes me happy when, somebody that hasn't been heard before, that has a really important thing or interesting thing to say, is able to say it. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to virtue signal about it, but it makes me happy when those kind of things happen, because sometimes you discover things that you never knew. It's like, wow, I never knew that somebody would have that perspective. And the fact that they weren't sure whether they were welcome to present that perspective is a problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it
Did
absolutely.
it
absolutely does. Absolutely. Yeah.
So you have to make people feel welcome, or they will not feel welcome. You can't just say the door is open. You have to actually actively grab them and say, you are welcome in here if you want to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I've always liked your thoughtful approach about things. It's very cool. And you've been through a lot since 1988 when you first, wanted to start writing in different things. I mean, you've been through, I think much like what I've been through, you've been through in your career. You've seen a lot of things, and it's kind of changed your opinions over time. And I want to just talk about, a couple of the first cases or things that you started researching.
Probably the first thing I started researching was the contactee movement, because I wrote those articles, and I actually went out and talked to them and went to their places and found out what their beliefs were and why they believe what they believe, which I thought was silly and fun and all that. But now I look at it as kind of a, almost as a religious studies person would, like my friend Diana or Steve Finley, the guy I was talking about with the Nation of Islam thing. Not only am I interested in what these people are doing, I'm interested in why they came to those conclusions and what forces caused them to have that kind of a belief. And to me, their belief systems are just as valid as most other religious belief systems. Well, you know what? If the belief system is involved with hurting, harming, or marginalizing people, I don't like it. But none of those, as far as I can tell, those contactee groups were not like that. They welcomed everybody, and they also did not care whether you were there or not. They wouldn't recruit anybody. They don't care if you have they follow your beliefs, their beliefs. They don't care, and that attracts me to them more. I've never actually been a person that goes out. I did join MUFON though. I joined MUFON in the 80s for a year, in like 88. I still have I found my form that I filled out. And I didn't, nobody ever called me or bothered me to go out and do any kind of field research at all. So my field research for ufology has basically been talking to people that are interesting to me for what I'm interested in, not somebody that's had a UFO experience. Although that's happened. I mean, I'll just encounter people, they'll tell me what's happened, and I can steer them to a proper organization or person I think that's valuable. But no, I'm not I don't know if I'm an armchair researcher, far from it, but my interest lies more in the, I guess, in the psychosocial, psychological, spiritual, right-brained realm than it does in the analytic, data gathering, hard science realm. Because my training is not in science; it's in the humanities. My degree's in art history, and I'm still interested in it from that angle. Funny though, I mentioned that MUFON thing. It said, "What is your interest right now in the UFO in UFOs?" And I said, "My interest right now is in non-ETH theories of UFO origin." In 1988, I was so proud when I read that in a weird way. And who ran MUFON for a gazillion years?
Walt Andrus.
Yeah, Walt Andrus signed. It's like approved membership. Blah blah blah. Here's your local guy, and I've got Walt Andrus' signature on that.
I wonder how you would not get approved to be in MUFON. Could that happen?
I don't know. I mean, I thought, oh boy, I'm going to go out and be a field investigator, and nobody ever called me, bothered me for anything. I sort of reached out and tried to get, find these people at meetings and stuff, but one, I was a kid, I guess, and two, they had their group of people that they worked with and they liked, and so they excluded me out of it, I guess, or they just didn't notice or care. I didn't feel like you people don't, you're not being nice to me. I'm just kind of like, well, if you're not going to be interested in me, I'll move on. So I did. I went on and started doing a magazine with my friends, doing what I wanted instead of waiting for somebody else to tell me what to do or to give me an opportunity. I just made my own.
Well, that's I've got to come back down there when we get out of quarantine, whatever, and just kind of go through some of your things. And I would love to even like just document, videotape, you going through things and your recollections of, all of these interactions with different people and stuff.
What am I, 90 years old?
Well, no, but we're not getting any younger.
Yeah, I know. Every time somebody asks me about, it's like, oh, remember this? It's like, remember this strange, remember Bill Cooper? What a weirdo. It's like, yeah, I met him a bunch of times. He was a total weirdo. Also a very nice person, unless you crossed him, and then he turned into a, especially if he was drunk, he would turn into a horrible, yelling, abusive person. So, and Jim Mosley was a friend of mine. I loved Jim. We talked regularly on the phone. I helped him find an old girlfriend that he had lost touch with years ago. Just things like that, meeting Bill Moore in 1988 or 87 or something like that, and seeing him at MUFON and running his table, selling copies of his speech at Vegas in 1989 that everybody, I was there, I watched the entire thing, I saw people yelling at him, and he ran out the back door, and I sat at his merchandise table selling copies of the speech for $25 a pop, which is a lot then. Dang. And everybody came and yelled at me. Like, I didn't even know what he was going to say. Leave me alone. I'm just, I'm just selling stuff here. But it was a really interesting, amazing, eye-opening kind of experience. I rode the bus out there. I took the bus from LA because I couldn't afford to fly there. So I took the bus out to Vegas and stayed in the hotel. And, I stayed in a cheap hotel on the old Strip because that's all I could afford. And then I would walk or something like that. I don't know how I got down to the hotel where the convention was, but I was there for that. And it was pretty amazing. As recounted in Project Beta.
And that's such a great book. I mean, you have to have Project Beta. There's no other way around it because that is such an important book for multiple reasons.
Well, thank you. I mean, I had fun writing it, and yeah. See, there, like what kind of research? Well, I was assigned to do the book, so I went out and looked for people. I looked for people that worked at Kirtland Air Force Base. I looked for ufologists that knew Paul Benowitz because he was dead he died 2 weeks before I started the book, which was very strange. I tried to talk to his family. They kicked me out of his company office and said they didn't want anything to do with me. I talked.
Oh, and I think that we have lost Greg, of course. So me, and I just have to say thank you so much for being with me, everybody, tonight. This is the first for me, and I'm definitely, you know me, I'm challenged, and I want to just say thank you to Amy for being there and helping me through this. She was going to come on the show tonight, but now we're going to try to get Greg back on. I know, this is me. These are my audio skills. This is why I should seriously have, I don't know what, probably 10 people around me trying to help me.
Yeah, host, producer, and engineer all at the same time is quite a job. I know.
Well,
where did I get cut off? How much longer do we have? And would you like to ask a different question?
You know what? No, let's go back. We've got about 10 more minutes before we're going to take a break. And just let's talk about the Bill Moore thing, because that whole saga for you was really interesting, and he's such a, he came out and give our audience, because we've got new people, a little background on him and some of the things that he did, because he actually accomplished a lot in the field. And then there was that fateful MUFON meeting where he came out, and it was like that was it. He was done. He walked away.
Mm-hmm. And there's been all kinds of accusations back and forth, and some are true and some are not, and some are based on suspicion, paranoia, and jealousy, and others are based on actual things that happened. Bill Moore was a UFO researcher. His two most famous books are The Philadelphia Experiment, which came out in '77, or I believe, and The Roswell Incident, the first book on the Roswell Incident, which, if he hadn't written that book and Stan Friedman hadn't talked to Jesse Marcel almost by chance at a radio station in Louisiana, we would not have a Roswell Festival, I'm pretty sure. So Stan was like a research associate. Bill did research by going to Roswell in 1977, 78 and talking to these people for the first time ever since 1947. And then he sent these notes to Charles Berlitz, the guy who wrote the Bermuda Triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And he also co-wrote the Philadelphia Experiment with him. And then I guess Grosset and Dunlap, who were their publishers, decided it would be a good idea for them to work together on another book, and that was the Roswell Incident. So when that came out, he was doing book tours for that, and somebody from Air Force Intelligence contacted him and asked him if he would like to, in exchange for secret UFO documents, do some work for them. And that work was, one, I think the only work really, there were two things. One, tell them what UFO researchers were thinking and doing, so they could find out basically if they were, at least as told to me, and it makes sense, if they were around any kind of secret defense projects, because a lot of UFO sightings tend to be, or at least used to tend to be, I think they still are, around military facilities for whatever reason, probably because a lot of them are secret projects and they just tend to look like UFOs, or people report them like that. And then there's probably some actual real UFOs that are around nuclear sites, etc. Anyway, so they wanted to keep tabs on what UFO researchers were doing and who they might be communicating with, because they were getting letters from people in Russia, like, I am Russian UFO researcher, could you please tell me what's going on with this case? And they could get hints about some secret project, because people would describe how it looked and how it moved and all that. And so they were worried about that. So they recruited him to do this. And so he did. He gave them reports on what people were thinking. And, he didn't tell them, the UFO researchers, what he was doing, because he was basically working not for, but with intelligence agencies, specifically Air Force intelligence. And in exchange, he got piles and piles of UFO documents, probably most of which were either useless, fake, or both. The most famous thing that he received, along with a few different researchers like Timothy Good, were the original MJ-12 documents that everybody knows about, with the Eisenhower briefing document with all the people listed and all that, which many years ago he's decided it was a hoax. And that at first he thought there was something to it, him and Jamie Chandray, his research associate partner. And then after a while, with less corroborating evidence, he decided it probably wasn't real. Although some people have said he made up the documents himself to hoax UFO researchers, and it's like, I don't know what the motivation for that is, but I think it was made up somewhere in the government just to affect people and begin some sort of mythology, which is still with us. Anyway, my book is about his interaction with this guy in New Mexico, Paul Benowitz. We have to go to a break?
You know what? We're going to go to a break in about 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll wrap it up quickly. UFO researcher in New Mexico, Albuquerque, that was seeing strange things at night. He started filming them. He called the Air Force about it. The Air Force realized that he was looking at things he probably shouldn't be. And so they had him come in and talk to them about what he was seeing. And he thought it was because he was a UFO researcher and he was telling them about UFO.
Right, and absolutely, and of course I keep having technical difficulties with my Skype. It's been one of those interesting days, so we're going to call Greg back one more time. And thank you for flowing with me, you guys. I love you.
Oh dear.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Can you please come be my assistant? Darling.
Okay. I don't know where I got cut off. Maybe
well, yes.
When we come
so,
back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I apologize for doing that. It's this, like I said, this is a work in progress. We're going to get there. And this is my first time doing this on Spreaker, which I'm really excited about. I think this is going to be a fun transition for me, and we'll just get, all sorts of new things happening, and I'm excited about that. But I want to just say that Northern UFOs asked, wasn't Richard Doty involved in the MJ-12 documents from day one? And so this is a question that I definitely want to get in before we go to break, if that's okay.
Yes, he was involved in it. I don't believe he wrote them because I don't think he has the research capacity and the time and all that to do it, or didn't have the time to do it. But he does. I'm pretty sure he knows where they came from and probably who made them, maybe, and probably knew they weren't real from the beginning, and he went ahead with it. Well, he's Air Force intelligence, so they're pretty much given free rein to do what they need to do as long as it's not illegal. Although I think he did cross the legality line a couple of times or got close to it, so he got in trouble for it.
Interesting. Well, the whole thing is so fascinating because he's just always there, and a lot of the same players are, and I'd love to talk to you about that. Can you stick around for another hour, or do you need to go somewhere since I put you on the spot last minute?
No, I'm fine. I mean, I can. The place I wanted to go is open till like 9 o'clock, so I'm fine.
To get your pinto beans.
Yeah, because we're gonna have a taco buffet for our friends, and then I thought I'd make some of my famous pinto beans and New Mexico chili sauce, which I love.
Oh, that sounds so good.
That's what I'll be doing after we get off the interview.
Okay, well, that sounds good. And I'm going to say we're just going to take a little break for a moment. And I'm going to play the new intro during the break for my song. It's about 3 minutes, and then we'll be back. But I want you guys to listen very carefully to the way I've put this forward. These are all pieces from past interviews that I've done. So listen to it, and we will catch you guys in about 3 minutes. And it's so nice we don't have any commercials. I love it. So we're going to take a break. Check this out, and we will be back. Yes, because I'm thinking that actually it's not playing what I wanted it to play. So, hey.
Well, take care of what you need to take care of. Are we still live?
You know what? I think we are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whatever. That was a fun break while it lasted. Oh my gosh. Okay, just kidding, guys. There's no break. But okay. That's okay. Hey, whatever. But these sort of spontaneous things are kind of what makes life exciting, I think.
I do that stuff on my show all the time. If there's a mistake, I had Massimo on, and we talked about flying for half an hour out of our hour and a half conversation. We just talked about flying and paragliding and aircraft. And it's like, because he's interested in it. We didn't talk about plasma UFOs or anything. We talked about flying. What the hell? Who cares?
But it's a nice break, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It is. I mean, I want to be able to talk to anybody about anything, and if that involves completely going off subject or having a mistake or whatever, it's fine by me, because I think I come from that like DIY punk aesthetic where you don't hide, you don't lie, you don't be who you're not. You do everything is within reason, except, unless there's something offensive or something you really don't want people to hear. You try to be honest in how you present yourself to people in a show like this. And it's so easy to do that now if you have all the control. It's also easy to make mistakes when you have all the control. But yeah.
I like it. I mean, thank you for justifying my free-flowing production skills and things. I mean, I will say there have been, it's kind of one of those things you look back on and you just think, okay, great. Yes, I clearly am human and I excel in certain aspects and then in others, you just roll with it. So thank you.
Yeah. If you're going to try to work out the bumps, then I guess it doesn't bother me whatsoever. Whereas if you'd have somebody on that you don't know, or for the first time, they'd probably be tapping their foot. And I really don't mind. I think it's wonderful that you're working out all the bugs while I'm here.
In front of God and the free world.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, whatever. You just got to, I guess, roll with it. And if this is the worst thing that happens today, then we know we're living right,
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So since we clearly don't have a break, and I'm hoping that you are, you have your depends on. I don't know what to say, but which is
I'm fine.
Okay, that's good. That's comforting. So when you got involved with with more and things, I mean, what was your initial reaction when you met him? Because I mean, he's a very different character, and he definitely has a bad rap in the field.
Very honest, at least with me. If you don't listen to him before you make a assumption about what he's doing, he either ignores you, has a rude comeback, or schools you if he thinks you're worth it. And what he did, that agreement I told you he had with intelligence, yes, they did give him a lot of documents. They did give him stuff that nobody else ever would have seen. They did give him things that have changed the field forever. A few of the things were kind of important, but none of them really answered the question, what does the government know about the subject and what have they done about it? I don't think they ever intended to give him that information, if it does exist. But they strung him along for a while with it. And the way he described it to me is like you're standing on a street corner and a guy says, could you watch for anybody coming over here? And they didn't pay him, but we'll give you $5 if you stand here and watch. And then like in 2 weeks, you're murdering people. You're like standing there, like helping murder people. You're like, hey, I didn't sign up for this. And no, he didn't ever have to murder people. And no, they never paid him as far as I know. And I think he's being honest with me about it. But he said, it's like, okay, you get a little deeper in and they're suddenly asking you, it's like, what's so-and-so doing? It's like, you didn't tell me I was going to have to do that. Or no, please give this document to Paul Benowitz. And he said he gave him a document, and he also told them, take this with a grain of salt. This is, don't think this is real. But I was told to give this to you. I think it was the Aquarius Document, Aquarius Teletype, if people know what that is. It was basically describing UFO sightings and interest by a certain segment of I guess part of the Air Force that dealt with that. I'd also mentioned for the first time a group it says that it's called MJ12. It was before the Eisenhower briefing document came out. Somebody was already trying to push the MJ12 narrative, like in 79 or 80 or something like that. So that's interesting. But he's somebody that really wanted to get to the bottom of things. He's extreme maverick. I mean, it's like, I don't care what you think of me. I don't care what you say about me. I'm going ahead and doing what I'm going to do. And I don't think most people, especially ufology, and at that time presented with that choice, would have done much different. And I think a few other people did take that choice, but he says he's not at liberty to, reveal who those are, because it's none of his business to out people. And I think there were some of those people, and I think there's still some of them are still around, and I don't know if they're ever going to say anything about it because of the blowback that Moore got.
Well, and I think that in a sense, it was very brave of him to come forward and talk about this, because I absolutely, knowing firsthand that, when you start getting into things, I mean, there are people that are put in your life or walk through your business door or, want to have communications with you multiple times a week. I mean, there are people, when you start bugging around, messing around, they are in your life like you would not believe. And so, and they, you get these ideas of, okay, I'm going to get close to the Holy Grail. And it is interesting. And I think it's very naive of people to think that this doesn't happen. I know when I talk to some of the older researchers, they think that was kind of the thing that happened in the 50s and 60s. But in my opinion, this is very prevalent today as well. And we have to really be careful about people that are approaching us, especially people that have been involved in a group of people that were identified by Moore. When you look at people that are still promoting the same things and taking people in a community and trying to basically groom them, so to speak, to keep promoting the narrative. I mean, those are things that people need to be aware of.
They should be. Also, you have to realize that these people you're talking about do have a sincere and abiding interest in the subject. So not everything they say is crap, but you have to be careful. It's the title of the first chapter of my book. You play the game or you get nothing. So either you play the game and you listen to these people and you interact with them and you realize that it's a game and there's moves being made, and some of them may involve trying to control what your perceptions are, or you just stay out of it and don't worry about it. Because if you play the game and you go into it knowing it's a game and knowing that people are going to try to manage your perceptions, then that's fine. If that scares you, if it bothers you, then stay away from it. But don't make assumptions about people and start yelling about them when you've not checked yourself. And especially, strangely enough, if you haven't talked to them. Because if you haven't talked to somebody and gotten straight from them whether they're going to lie or not, you can't, you can do research and make an assumption based on their actions, and then they should be free to, and others should be free to criticize that. But there's a lot of people I don't totally trust, but I still listen to them, and I still talk to them because there's an information exchange there that interests me, and I'm not, I've already gone through paranoid periods and all that, so I don't really mind. If I get fooled, fine, I've been fooled, so what? But the game is far more important to me than the details of what happens in it, if that makes any sense.
No, it absolutely does, and this to me is something that I think is, because it's hit so close to home to me, to see what happened, when with the MUFON days and having a person come to my home to want to see my modem. Same with the business, and just different things where there were specific people who were involved in this well-known group. I mean, who came to my business from out of state. So there have been different periods of for me where it is. I mean, I look back at it now, and that definitely was an attempt to be that they were attempting to handle me, and that's it. Just there's no other way to say that.
Yeah, true. And you always have to consider that you may be making too many assumptions about something, even if it's true. You know what I mean? Just if I make assumptions that make me paranoid, I back away from those assumptions, even if or I take them under advisement, because I don't like feeling paranoid. I've done that before. I don't like it.
No, I wanted, and that's important because you can
but even
go
if
down
somebody even if somebody is looking at my stuff or hacking my Twitter account, which happened, a very light hacking of my account I think so somebody would, and it happened at a very specific time, so I think somebody was letting me know they could do it. But all it did was make me say, okay, that's interesting. There's a data point. Let me just change my Twitter account, my Twitter password, which they could probably find out again, and not worry about it because there's nothing I can do about it.
Right.
But it was interesting to me. Like I said, instead of being paranoid, I just kind of cock my eyebrow and say, there's a data point.
And it's been interesting because I was so kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. It was like, I thought, hey, we're doing this, for the greater good. And, these people that are the forefront now on the edge of disclosure, that they're meaning well, but then, so I took things at face value and I didn't question things early on, and I didn't get paranoid. It was like, I just, like you said, you just like, oh, there's a data point there. I'm going to put that in my little bag. But then when I did start to put things together on this end, especially with some of the skinwalker stuff, it was like, okay, now I see what was happening. I can step back and look at the bigger picture and see the pieces kind of fall together, and okay, that was what it was. And now I'm a little bit more conscientious of things like that. It's a good learning experience, but as we have seen with, Bill Moore, he understood that, you get in there, you start playing with fire, you're potentially exposed, or you are exposed to disinformation. And these guys, like you were saying, they want to keep track of specific people in the field. And if somebody like Benowitz had or photographed something, that they were going to step in and try to run defense on that. And in that case with Benowitz, they did so basically, they drove him crazy. I mean, it was very that was a very sad state of affairs, but that is something that happened.
Well, he was very primed to be crazy. He was having problems before the Air Force got to him, and according to Chris Lambright, even before I first thought he was having contact with him. And I think Chris's idea was it was completely preventable. And my idea, as far as I could tell, I mean, I could be wrong, was that Benowitz was already, like a lot of people in the UFO field, very willing to believe their belief system rather than any disconfirming evidence. So it was easy to make him crazy. I don't think they tried to drive him crazy. They just tried to keep him away from stuff, and they didn't care if he was having mental problems and having a breakdown and had to be put in an institution for a while by his family. I think some people that were involved in that, such as Doty, I don't know what people think of this, but he says he's sorry he did it. I don't know if he is or not, but he said that. But it was a two-way street. They basically started feeding him as much stuff to get him away from the intelligence and the defense stuff as possible and towards whatever his paranoid fantasy was, not thinking that it would actually, affect his mental health very, very severely. And that's wrong. I never said it was right, and I never said it was excusable. But it's that, I guess, by definition, they did drive him crazy. But if somebody started feeding me that kind of stuff and I got more and more and more scared, and worked up stories in my mind with very little evidence that anybody else could see. As long as I had my wits about me, I'd probably back off of it. I mean, I don't know, but I have been through paranoid periods where people were telling me things that made me really scared, and I was just tired of being scared. So I just said, okay, I make a decision not to be scared anymore. And it took a while. You can't just like turn it off one day, but it's a very weird mindset. And I'm sure somebody could come along that's much better at this than I could ever imagine, and make me paranoid in 5 minutes again. I'm sure it could happen.
So do you mind talking about that? I know that, we've had private conversations about that, but I think this is, to me, your experience, my experience. I mean, it's important for other people who are getting into this subject to understand the way things can roll out and how you can do what you did, which is look at this and decide, hey, this is not where I'm going to go. But would you talk a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, when I was working on my magazine, I was approached by a guy who said he was some naval intelligence, and he started telling me and a couple of friends things that were not generally publicly known. He would say, this was during the Kosovo thing. Watch Kosovo, there's going to be this next week. And we're like, okay. And he would happen just as he said. It would suddenly be in the news. Or he'd tell my friend, go out to Burbank Airport at 4:35 on Thursday. And the stealth fighter would fly over before it was even really revealed to the public, or it had just been revealed. How would he know these things? So then he starts telling us, the government knows about aliens, and here's pictures of captured alien craft at Area 51, and he shows us all these things, probably Photoshop pictures, I couldn't tell. But then things started happening, like my mail was opened, mostly from Carla Turner and a cattle mutilation researcher guy, actually only. And it was obviously opened. I mean, it's like, sorry, the post office regrets to inform you that our machines messed up your mail and opened it up. It's like, no, just those two people every single time, that's not going to happen. So, that's debatable. Maybe it was just coincidence. But I also had, phone calls all hours of the day and night where my phone would ring and I'd pick it up and all there would be is like a weird noise on the other end or nothing. Or like garbled noise, like a phone that wasn't quite working right, and I could hear voices, but not really. I mean, almost John Keelish. And this went on for months until I just stopped answering the phone just to see what would happen. And the phone would ring. This was before cells. The phone would ring 30, 40, 50 times before they hung up. I mean, I disconnected the phone machine because when I had the phone machine on, it would just hang up immediately. But if I picked up, I would hear noises. And if I didn't pick up, it would just ring for, 30, 40, 50 rings. I counted just to see what would happen. What else? I thought there were people stopping in front of the house and taking pictures of the apartment where I lived, which could have been real estate people, but whatever. Just all these things. And I was getting more and more paranoid. I was wondering who was looking at my computer. And I was wondering if my food was going to be poisoned. It's like just the most insane. And the guy never said that. He just said people can keep track of what you're doing very easily. Just to make me paranoid. And it worked. And at a certain point, I thought, I'm either going to go nuts or I'm just going to stop feeling paranoid all the time. There's just no way around it. That's my only choice. So I decided to stop feeling paranoid, and it took, 2 or 3 months, and it worked. I wasn't scared anymore. The funny thing was, when I decided silently myself to stop feeling paranoid, the mail tampering stopped. I think that's a coincidence, but, maybe there's something else going on there. I never realized that until I was lecturing at a college for a bunch of kids, students, in a class called UFOs and Culture, which is a great class. And somebody asked me, it's like, what made you stop and when did it stop and how did it stop? And I just said, I never realized this, but when I made the decision to not be paranoid, the obvious things seemed to stop. So what is that? Does that mean my mindset had a lot to do with the reality of it? Who knows? I really don't know. All I know is whenever I find myself sliding into paranoia now, I pick myself up and pull myself back from it, even if I think there's merit to it, and try to be clinical about it rather than scared about it.
And that's important. I mean, for me with the stuff like we've talked about privately and I've talked about on the air, I mean, some of the stuff with the Skinwalker Ranch and things that I've uncovered and unfortunately have come to kind of a conclusion that I didn't want to come to. I mean, some of these things, I mean, I realize there are a lot of people in power, a lot of people with money, a lot of people that are involved with, with top secret testing and different things. And so, of course, they're going to have to get in there and do what they can do to protect our interests. And I understand that and things. And there are specific tactics they employ and kind of catching you off balance, getting you off balance is one of those tactics. But it's funny because there's a fine line between, you get into this subject, and I think a lot of people that have had sightings, whether they're actual UFO sightings or not, it's like they get wrapped up in that paranoia without a good cause.
Well, it's exciting. It's like being in a haunted house or watching a horror movie. It's exciting to be paranoid. It's a thrill,
right?
I mean, it's a negative thrill, but it's a thrill. It's a real life haunted house.
Yeah.
Or at least you think it is.
Right.
And some people like that. I don't.
It's if you kind of like that adrenaline rush, and then all those things, it is very it can reel you in for sure.
Yeah, and the guy said one of the first things he said to me was, "You've written about UFO." He goes, "I looked at your file," and I said, "What file?" He says, "There's a file on you," and I said, "Yeah, what does it say?" He says, "I can't tell you, but if you write about UFO stuff, you got a file." And I read it, and you know what? That to me, of course, what do? You flatter the person. Oh, I'm important. I've written something important that the government's interested in. I don't know whether he's telling the truth or not. He could have been completely full of crap, but that got my attention. Oh boy, an ego boost.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to let you know things that other people don't. And then suddenly I'm going to let you know things that other people don't that are very dangerous and scary. It's just I could see, after the fact, I could kind of see what was going on, or at least what I think was going on. And I see this over and over, UFO people, I've got a source, and it's like,
right.
Great. And you're telling everybody exactly what the source says.
Right.
You're doing exactly what they want you to do.
I know. That's crazy. I mean, I've been privy to certain things, and there are things that I've been privy to that I've not gone out to the public to share because I understood, or intuitively just, my senses were just like, no, this is not in your best interest. None of this can be verified. And this is just one of those great plots to try to steer the narrative and kind of undermine everything that I'm trying to do. And so that really, it's been a curious thing, but...
Or could be.
Right, could be. Allegedly.
I never think anything I can't verify. I don't run around treating it as fact. I treat it as a data point.
Right. Yeah. Well,
because otherwise I'll slide into paranoia, and I'll have people it'll be very easy to control me because people will know what my reactions will be, and I don't want people to know what my reactions will be, and I also don't want people to think that that I'm just somebody's megaphone, because I'm not.
Right.
I was for a little while. That's what caused the paranoia. So I didn't want to do that anymore.
So the person that approached you just kind of came into your life and then said all of that and then just kind of slowly disappeared?
We just stopped communicating after a while. There was heavy communication for a while, and then I think when I was not playing the game the way that they wanted me to play it, whatever game was afoot, I was just slowly not talked to anymore. And I don't remember if I felt betrayed, relief, left out, or anything. But it certainly was I still have books of this stuff this guy wrote and gave to me, like privately published stuff, mainly designed to make me crazy, I think.
And so, I mean, this was somebody you could verify where he worked?
No, I couldn't do any of that. I couldn't. All I had was he told me stuff that was going to be in the news and that was going to happen that would have no way of knowing unless he had either was involved in it or had a connection. Somebody tells you something's going to happen in a theater of war days or weeks before it happens, and then it happens, comes out in the news. Obviously, they know somebody.
Right.
So, that was his way of, he showed me, I think, or at least showed my friend his military record. But that can be faked, I think, in a lot of ways.
So did the things that he told, the things that he said that were going to be released, did that come to fruition?
He didn't say anything was going to be released. Okay. He told us about to establish that he knew things, or at least could be who he said he was. He would tell us stuff that most people would not normally know, like when things would happen during time of war, or when the stealth fighter was going to take off, or whatever.
Okay.
These were not open source things that you would normally know. Absolutely not. So either he was who he said he was, or he was involved with people that could tell him these things.
Interesting. I mean, it's...
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's how disinfo works. You give somebody a bunch of true stuff, hopefully stuff they couldn't find out normally, mixed with some not true stuff that will be, mixed into the narrative or into your brain, or your narrative in your brain about what's going on. And, it worked, and it made me paranoid. And I mean, I can't think of anything right now, but what happened to me during that period and the beliefs that came into being in my mind during that period are still with me. Not the paranoid inducing ones, but hopefully the ideas about how this works and how to, be, how to be careful about who you listen to. I mean, I'm far more interested in the psychological and personal idea about what the UFO thing is rather than the government thing. Because as I said recently, and I keep saying over and over, and I've said for a while, not to be like, I told you so, but disclosure is like asking the parent that always lies to you to tell you the truth just this one time, and if it isn't what you expect, then they're lying. Right. You won't believe them if it's not what you expect to hear. That's what disclosure is to me. And so to me, it's basically a useless pursuit. Unless you just in it to try and find out what the background is or whatever. If you're looking for, daddy to come and tell you the truth, that ain't going to happen.
Exactly. I like it. And I mean, the bottom line is hey, we've had disclosure in a different form every decade. So it's just... Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it's just, it never comes to fruition. And I think what we're going to be told is what we have been told. And all it is it's going to be is different iterations of, we know what's going on. This is what it is. And I don't know why this is being done. I don't think it's being done because somebody thinks the public really needs to know. I think it's being done for some other ulterior motive, and I don't know what that is yet. But that's just, I could be wrong. That's my paranoid Project Beta, AFOSI, CIA, NSA, connected brain working. And I could be wrong. So that's fine. It could be that the government does know everything about UFOs and doesn't want to tell us because it's some big secret. But it's way, way, way more complicated than most UFO people think, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
The relationship with the power structure and the governments and private corporations to the UFO subject is so beyond what UFO researchers think that if they were told the truth, it wouldn't make no sense to them.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying it would make sense to me either. I'm not smarter than a lot of people or anything like that. But that's my idea, is that it's so weird and so oblique and so off the subject of aliens from other planets, although that might be part of it, that it's so intimately connected to us and how we see things and how our biology works and how our culture works and all that, that we can only see it a certain way.
Right.
And I don't think that's the way it is. The way it is an unnameable, almost unnameable, indescribable thing. And I think anybody that does know what's going on is dealing with it in that way, and they're doing it in a much more subtle and skillful way than somebody at MUFON could ever even imagine.
Oh yeah, I mean that's so rudimentary in the thought process there. I think, and it is I mean when you start digging deeper, and I've just been amazed to see people in people that are promoting disclosure, and then people that are doing TV shows, people that have a vested interest in making more money. I mean, contractors, Bigelow, I mean, different people that have created these empires built on this mystique and have done a lot of other business dealings behind the scenes under the guise of UFO research. And I think that is fascinating to me. And I know that you and I have, you've got a different areas that you're interested in, but unfortunately I've been kind of dragged down this rabbit hole because it affects me and my community and a loved one and different things, and that's been really just kind of mind-boggling to step back. And when I look at the fact that you've got the UFO, all the UFO reports that are coming out now on Fox News. You have people that are, Marco Rubio. You've got people that are in this, and they're, I mean, the bottom line to me, I believe, is getting private contractors contracts, and you can do that under the UFO banner. I think that's great, but these are some of the things that people need to look at and not assume that, because people released these videos that were actually was released a couple fewer years earlier, that this is what we're getting. There's a lot behind the scenes, as you pointed out.
Yeah, I think we make too many assumptions too. I mean, once you start making assumptions, especially with the UFO thing, you're already lost. You have to. I saw another T-shirt that says "Mimic the obliqueness of the subject," meaning don't. The UFO subject has never approached us head on. It's always been something that's just out of our reach or out of our understanding, or in a way where we will only see what is reflected back to us from it. And if we can get past that, I think there'll be a little better understanding of what's going on, irrespective of whether videos are released or the government tells us or whatever groups do what they're going to do. I mean, I think that the most important thing for people to do is to take on the subject in a very personal way and find out what the meaning is to them.
Yes.
Not about because it's going to be different for everybody. Like you talk to somebody, 2 or 3 people have had a UFO experience, and they all saw completely different things. They all had completely different experiences, but they all know that they're talking about the same thing. They'll say, I know that feeling. I know how you feel. I know. And their experience could be completely different. Maybe somebody just had a feeling. One person had an abduction. Another one just had like a daylight disc sighting or whatever. But they're going to know that each other have had the same experience. That's really interesting to me. That's not something you can put in a data column. That's something that deals with parts of our mind that are not addressed by most of the UFO culture.
I love that. And, I wanted to say, because I think for me, it has been interesting because I've had a lifetime full of experiences. I mean, that's why I'm here. But I have, I think the more that I've dug into the human aspect of things, the more or even like with Skinwalker Ranch, it's like I had an experience up there that really blew my mind. But then I started, unfortunately, you get polluted by other people or other groups that are trying to tell you what it is, and it takes power away from you. And so For me, I think it's really important if people have experiences, maybe don't go to a group. Keep that to yourself, because that's a very special thing. And when you turn to other people, that's when you lose your power, in my opinion.
Or at least turn to somebody that thinks they're a researcher, an authority, or whatever. Other people, yeah, I think it'd be good to share your experience with other people that have the same experience, like support. But when somebody starts telling you by asking you questions, how big was the craft? Where did they come from? You know, just anything leading. I mean, those are obvious examples, but anything leading whatsoever. I went and spoke. I said I'd refuse to speak at MUFON ever again. Then I thought that's not very nice, because people are still in MUFON and it's not their fault what happened at the top. So I went and spoke for Earl Gray's and Jeff Krause's group up in the San Fernando Valley a few months ago. And before my talk, I threw some propaganda at them. I said, "Here, I don't know what your group feels about this, but here's a suggestion. When you go out, next time you go out, or maybe develop something around this, when you go out to talk to a witness, take a whole bunch of watercolors and colored pens and pencils and paper, and just when you get to the witness's house, tell them, look, I know you want to tell me all about it. However, here's a bunch of stuff. Draw, write down whatever you want to do, what happened to you, and don't talk to me about it until you're done. And if you want to talk to me when you're done, great. If not, keep the drawings for yourself and all that, and we'll leave you alone." But I think that not having any front loading from the researcher, I mean, they got enough from the culture and everything that they have to deal with, but having a researcher there who's a UFO researcher with all the cultural baggage we have about UFOs is basically just going to keep that loop going and going and going, where we collect data, we know what it is. Let the person who's had the experience express themselves with no filters on whatsoever, at least from the UFO researcher's point of view, and see what happens. The other thing I said was, people say, what's the most important thing in ufology? I said the most important thing is the question, where do UFO sightings, what causes UFO sightings and experiences? Not where do they come from, not what does the government think, not what's this Wilson document that came out, and what did Hal Puthoff say, or whatever. The most important question is what causes UFO reports. And that doesn't mean where do they come from or whatever. That means the psychology of people, the way we deal with it, the way we tell stories, the way our physiology works, the way our brains work to tell stories and recall and trauma and all those things. All these things go into what it causes a UFO report, including, the original stimulus, which was whatever it was, whatever the person saw or experienced. There's a stimulus there, but all we have left is the reaction. So I think we should really, really, really concentrate on the reaction rather than the stimulus, because we have a handle on the reaction. Mm-hmm. We don't have any handle on the stimulus. But by examining the reaction, maybe we can worm our way back towards what the stimulus might be by looking at ourselves.
I love that. Of course, you always say things that completely resonate with me, even if I I try really hard to not engage, but I do. Oh dear.
I do, but it's just basically friends and friendly people and people that listen to my show. I don't often engage with people that I can't get anything out of, or just make me feel bad for no reason except they just make me feel bad.
Well, and like I said, this should be an empowering thing. I mean, we should be, whether it's ET or whether it's God or a demon or whatever, we're on a journey, and it should be, whether we realize we're right or we're wrong, it should be something that empowers us and something that helps us grow. And we oftentimes lose that because we get so caught up in, the nonsense and the game playing and things that aren't necessarily healthy. But it is refreshing to find people that I have like you, that can offer that insight into things that helps me grow as a person.
Yeah, that's why I do my show too. I'm always going to have somebody on that helps me understand things in a way that I never did before. And I love that about my show, which is why I don't do it all the time. I'll go for like a month or 2 or 3 with no show because I haven't found anybody that'll inspire me. And when I do, I'll throw that show up. The other thing you said about being right or wrong, you know who's wrong invariably to me right off the bat is anybody that just desperately wants you to agree with them and tell you that theirs is the only way that to look at the subject or anything really. But anybody that's just so interested in getting you to agree and believe what they believe, I'm pretty certain they're wrong.
Pretty much. I think you're right about that. And I want to, like, I
think you're right about being wrong.
That was so dumb. Oh dear. Well, even my dogs think so. See, this is like it's like Dr. Doolittle's, magical play ranch around here. I don't know if it's not Lewis, it's the dogs, and if it's not my excellent recording skills and production skills, I don't know. It's what keeps life exciting. But I want to go back and ask you about Cooper, because you'd mentioned, that you had met him, and he was an interesting fellow who had some pretty different beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just share your thoughts about him for a moment.
Oh, geez.
It can be like 1 or 2 words, or you can just say, I pass.
All I remember is that, he's famous for the book Behold the Pale Horse, which is way, way, way off the regular narrative of ufology, history, everything. Doesn't mean it's wrong. But the fact that he was actually, I knew people that talked to him where he said he wasn't totally serious about it, which is almost kind of not surprising. Not that he was trying to pull one over on people. Just that he was trying, like John Keel, people will say that, he wasn't always accurate when he reported. But when you look at John Keel, it's like looking at a documentary or a movie or a painting. He's trying to make a point with the colors available to him. And that may not always be what people think of as straight out reporting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if you apply that to Bill Cooper, just crank it up like 100 times. And, get a brush that has like 3 colors and is a huge, giant 2-inch wide brush. That's how he made his point. And for a lot of people, it's very easy to understand his point. And it's so far off the narrative, it rejects the mainstream narrative, which people really don't like. And I mean, it's become a culture has become like that. But back then, it was just Bill Cooper and some, a few people that were listening to him. So actually, the nation has kind of been Cooperized at this point.
Yes. Thank you.
Because it rejects a mainstream narrative simply because it's a mainstream narrative, and also simply because people have been lied to for so long, they don't know where to turn anymore. And it's a lot of work to find the kind of truth that empowers you or makes you feel like you can do something about it and you have some kind of control over your life. That takes work. And nobody really wants to do that work. So here we are.
And thank you. I mean, I think that's really important. Oh, Lordy, have mercy on my tired soul. But anyway, there you have that. So I think right now I've just decided that I'm going to roll with every sort of thing that happens on my show. This is going to be a part of my new show. That'll be good.
Yeah, I have sirens on my show, so you're going to have the dog barks.
Okay, I'm kind of down with this. I'm digging my new thing here, but Cooper, it is really interesting because to me, you see some of the radical ideas that really had nothing to do with UFOs that he held, and some of the people that started to follow him.
The driver in the Kennedy limousine turned around and shot Kennedy. That was his big. The driver did it thing. I think came from Cooper.
I'm not surprised. I mean, there was a lot of interesting things that took hold and really captured people in the UFO community. And I think that's, for me, looking, and I hate to even say this, but, looking at this, I think that a lot of this is the UFO subject has been manipulated for political reasons. and to spread information. And it's almost like a testing area. It's like you throw little seeds out here and you see where it goes and how it grows and how the information is disseminated, and you can, put your idea about religion in, or you can put your idea about, the commies or all sorts of things. And it's been
whoever's running the QAnon thing knows this really well.
Right. Yes. And it's fascinating for me, and I've mentioned this before, and we've talked about this a lot, because I've got this wonderful archive and library, and I look back at the history, and every time I'm like opening or looking at a Fate magazine, or I'm looking at, any of the magazines from the 40s to 50s, and sweet mama baby, no comment there. But clearly there's a lot going on in my neighborhood right now. But you look at this, and you're looking at the back of a Fate magazine, and for decades it's like there's advertisements from Rosicrucians, the Rosicrucian order, and then you look at the lots of lots of other people that have ad space in there.
Well, you know what? The magazine was made for people that did not buy the narrative, which is great, because I don't buy the narrative either. But and that's the kind of people you want to advertise to, because if you already go to church and you already have your family and everything's going, that's one thing. That's the mainstream narrative. But if you're interested in weirdness and interested in the inner growth of each person and how each person has that divine spark and can, that's the kind of people who are going to read Fate. So that's how you have those ads in there.
It is interesting though, but I think it's one of those things though. I think it's
or crazy paranoid people.
Right. Oh, mother of pearl. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's interesting. So I don't know, but this is an adventure, and I love it, and I hope that someday you write your biography. Wow, my crazy toucan cantina right there. That was what was that? That's like Fruit Loops. That took me back a ways.
Yeah, well, my Fruit Loops reaction was actually, it was a Fruit Loops reaction. I think I would be crazy to think that anybody would want to hear anything I would have to say about this subject. But then people ask me questions, and they say, "Why don't you write that up?" And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I should. Some of it, a great deal of it actually is in Defies Language, because I just built on stuff that I'd heard and seen and all that to make entries in that book, which was mostly from UFO Mystic, that site that Nick and I did for a while. But yeah, there's a lot of it in there. I mean, I'm not trying to do a book ad so much right now, but yeah, there's a lot of it. All the government stuff and all the crazy people I met and all the wonderful people I met, and there's articles in there about Bill and Jamie Chandray and Pam Stonebrook, the reptilian alien sex lady. She was a very good friend of mine. We were best pals for a while too. And to me, it was like being around a rock star, because she was basically an abductee/contactee hybrid. And also she was really fun to hang out with. She was just a really fun, interesting person. Or Gabe Valdez, I talked about meeting him and what a nice person he was, and how his family was so nice to me. I became friends with them, and how great that was, but also the weirdness surrounding him, and what, as being the first person really in law enforcement to start taking the cattle mutilation thing seriously. Just all these different people. And it's you're right. It's amazing. I mean, I'm sure you could do the same thing. A lot of people we know, Nick probably has an incredible amount of stories.
Oh yeah.
So
I'm sure. And speaking of Gabe Valdez, since he was one of the first people in law enforcement that started taking this seriously, were there people that approached him that tried to, glom on to things or try to steer the narrative in his world?
I don't think so, because if they did, either he ignored it or he didn't tell me about it. He did tell me and show me, he found electronic bugs in his house. in his smoke alarm, in his telephone, and a couple other places. And he showed me pictures of them when he was doing the cattle mutilation research in the late 70s, early 80s, probably probably all the way up through 80s, 90s, whatever. When it was prevalent up there, and he was working around Dulce, he had some attention from people.
Wow.
From somebody that would put bugs in his home.
Well, you're living when you find a bug in your smoke detector. That's interesting. And,
yeah, and the phone underneath the bed. I think he found other places too. I guess he had something to sweep from. I have no idea, but somehow he found these things in his house, and he realized. And the funny thing is he never said this was horrible. Oh my God! He just said, "Yeah, I found these things. Kind of interesting. I disconnected them."
Oh God. Well, now that technology it's so much easier for them to come on in and look at me waking up in the morning on my cell phone, or doing my little shoe plottler dance from Germany that I tried to learn before I went to Germany, and just think, okay, if that's exciting for you, then that sounds good.
Yeah, it's one of I got one of those emails that people are getting. We've been looking in your camera and we see what you've been doing and blah blah blah. And we looked at all the porno sites, and it's like, and I looked at that and I'd say, so I'm not doing anything illegal. I really don't give a shit if you have video of me doing whatever I do in my room. Most of it's boring and embarrassing. I don't know about embarrassing for anybody else, but it's just kind of, and so what if I'm embarrassed by something? We're going to tell all your friends and coworkers. It's like, they know what I do.
Well, I'm sure my friends probably do at some intuitive level as well. But
I do nothing illegal, so what do I care?
Right.
I might be slightly eccentric, but I don't do anything illegal, so go ahead and look at, I don't want it to happen. I'd rather it didn't. I have covers over my cameras and all that stuff, but you can't shut it out completely.
Well, all I can say is if that's the case, I'm sure somebody somewhere has great video of me looking like Alice Cooper because I haven't wiped all my makeup off, but it's running down my cheeks, and I'm, in my friggin', tank top, and I'm, oh my gosh, I'm like literally practicing, because my big thing, I can't believe I'm really talking about this, but before I went to Germany, is I thought I'd learn the shoe plottler, and that was, for me, that was great fun to learn a dance that was commonly done by the virgin males who lived in their mother's basements in Germany. But hey,
yeah.
It was good.
I have, and as you know, one of my hobbies is roping stuff. So
yeah.
I've got all kinds of weird little quirks, but who cares?
Well, that's what makes life beautiful. I would much rather be different than, follow the norm. And I'm sure all of us listening to this show tonight can say the same thing. It's like we're out there, we're pushing boundaries, we're looking into things that a lot of people don't want to look into, and I want to just say that
relentlessly curious.
Yeah, and it's an empowering thing. It's a really a beautiful thing, and you've brought up some really great points that I think people need to understand. That we need to understand that of course there are going to be people that are trying to, if you get too far down this, people that will try to approach you, people that are going to steer the narrative. There's a lot of disinformation out there, and it's important, I think, for me to really encourage people to not get sucked into the big disclosure, the red herring, all of these things. There's so much more, as you pointed out, and I can't thank you enough for being here and doing this like literally a minute after my show was supposed to start. Bless you, my child.
Well, of course, anytime, as long as I'm home. I mean, I knew I'd be on the hook for at least an hour. 2 is fine.
Well, you know what? We would have talked like this anyway. So.
I know.
I know.
I really don't hold much back on shows, especially with friends and people that I feel like I can be honest with, even though there's I don't know how many people listening, but I really appreciate it.
And so Radio Mysterioso, I mean, that is such a kick-butt show. When are you going to air your next show?
I'll put it up probably sometime. I keep saying this week, and then I don't do it because I've got all this other work. Maybe I'll work on it tonight and post it. But the next show is with Tui Snyder, who's a researcher from Texas, and I saw her at the last UFO Congress, the live one with a bunch of people, and she talked about the 1897 airship mystery from the point of view of a folklorist and a researcher of history, not as a UFO person. So that fascinated me. But then we also talked about things like her work, like doing research in cemeteries and who's buried there and why they're cemetery traditions and things like that. And then we also talked about what was it called? The Santa Claus bank robbery, which is something that happened in Texas. And I think during the Depression on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, something like that, a group of people robbed a bank all dressed like Santa Claus, or at least one guy did. And then later they caught him and still in his Santa Claus outfit, I think, took him to jail. And then the crowd got mad and lynched him. So they killed Santa Claus.
Oh, and it's really funny that you bring up Santa Claus because Mario has been mentioning Santa Claus in chat all night. So that's kind of an odd coincidence. I like it. Even if that story you just told didn't really end well, but
But yeah, that's an example of what happened on the show. We didn't, and she said, I forgot I was being interviewed. I was having so much fun. And I said, good, that's exactly how I like shows to go.
Well, I love it. And you are one of my favorite people on the planet. And so thank you so much for being here. And I'll post links to your show when you get that out there and things. And I just wanted to say thank you for all of my friends who have found me here. I didn't publicize what my next move was because it's been kind of a sudden thing, but I'm here. I'm not going away. Friday nights with my friends is an important night for me. I love it. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Mario, UFO researcher, Bruce, all of you, Irv. You guys mean the world to me. Go to UFOclassified.com to find out more, to support the show. I would like to play music on the outro, but given the way I'm rolling tonight, that's not going to happen. So thank you, Greg. Next week, it'll be on. It'll be great. But thank you, Greg. We'll talk this weekend, and you guys have a safe and wonderful weekend, and I will catch you next week.